If you're over 60, 70, or even 80, you already know something younger people don't. Time changes what matters. In your 20s, you want to be understood. In your 40s, you want to be respected. But after 80, you want one thing above everything else. Peace. Peace in your heart. Peace in your home. Peace in the final chapters of your life. And with that peace comes a surprising realization. A realization many elders quietly carry. Not every truth needs to be spoken. Not every story needs to be shared. Not every memory needs to be opened again. There comes a point where you sit alone with your thoughts, maybe on the edge of your bed in the early morning, or during a quiet afternoon, and you wonder, do I really need to share everything I've lived, learned, and regretted? Society teaches us that honesty is the highest virtue. Tell the truth. Don't hide anything. Be open. But no one talks about the other side of honesty. The side where truth can wound. Where truth can disturb the harmony you've spent a lifetime building. Where truth can become a heavy weight placed on the shoulders of the people you love the most. Because the older you get, the more you understand something essential. Some truths don't bring healing. They bring confusion. They bring guilt. They bring unnecessary pain. Especially when shared too late in life. And so in this video, we are going to talk about something most people avoid. The 4 things you should never reveal to your family after 80. If living peacefully, gracefully, and with dignity matters to you. Not because you're hiding. Not because you're ashamed. Not because you're being dishonest. But because you finally understand something younger generations are still learning. Silence can be a form of love. Boundaries can be a gift. And privacy can be a source of emotional freedom. There are stories from your past that shaped you profoundly. Stories filled with regret, pain, courage, or struggle. But revealing them now would only plant seeds of worry and sadness in the hearts of your children and grandchildren. There are decisions you made decades ago that were right for that version of you. Not for the people watching this video today. And there are experiences only you can carry with the wisdom you've gathered from a lifetime of growth. So stay with me until the very end of this video. Because the 4th point is the one almost every senior I've spoken with says they wish they had learned earlier in life. This isn't a video about hiding the truth. It's about protecting the peace you've earned. It's about guarding your dignity. It's about keeping your heart light in the years that matter most. Now, let's begin. As we grow older, the past becomes sharper than ever before. It's strange, isn't it? When you're young, you hardly think about yesterday. You're too busy running toward tomorrow. But after 60, 70, 80, the mind becomes its own quiet library. And suddenly, the books you haven't opened in decades start falling off the shelves on their own. Old choices, old mistakes, old desires, old heartbreaks. Moments you thought you had forgotten come back in full color. Sometimes with a smile. Sometimes with a sting. And there are certain regrets so deep, so personal, that even at 80 or 90, they still whisper to you. In the quiet hours before sunrise. But here's something that only age can teach you. Backhand index pointing right, your regrets are a part of your soul. But they are not your family's burden. Most seniors don't talk about this. They feel guilty for holding things inside. They feel they must tell the truth before they die. But sharing old wounds late in life rarely brings the healing you expect. Your children, no matter how old they are, don't have the same memories, the same context, or the same emotional understanding of the world you grew up in. When you share a painful regret with them at 80, you're often handing them a puzzle that has no solution. And instead of clarity, they end up with confusion. Instead of connection, they feel sadness. Instead of closeness, they feel a strange, unexpected distance. Because they don't see your past the way you do. They only see the parent they love. Let me tell you a story. There was a man named Frank, 82 years old. A gentleman who lived a good life. Raised a family. Worked hard. And loved deeply. But there was one secret he carried for nearly 60 years. A woman he loved before he met his wife. A love he never spoke about. A love that slipped through his fingers. When he was young and foolish and didn't know the value of certain things. One day, in a moment of emotional weakness, he told his daughter everything. He thought it might bring them closer. He thought it would show her that he was human too. But instead, it unsettled her. She began to wonder. Was Dad ever truly happy? Did he ever really love Mom the way she loved him? Has he been carrying sadness all these years? It didn't bring Frank peace, it brought him regret. Later he told me. It felt like I had placed a small pebble in her shoe. Not enough to stop her from walking, but enough to make every step uncomfortable. That's the thing about late-life confessions. They don't dissolve pain. They transfer it. Your regrets belong to your story. They shaped your growth. They carved your wisdom. But they are not meant to be carried by your children. Your family needs you to be present. They need your strength, your warmth, your experience. Not the emotional burdens from decades ago. That they can't change, fix, or fully understand. And here's an important truth. Backhand index pointing right. Your regrets already taught you what you needed to learn. They have done their job. You don't need to reopen the wound. You survived those moments. You grew past them. You built a life beyond them. Not every chapter of your past needs to be read out loud. Some pages are meant to remain closed. Not out of shame, but out of wisdom. Your family doesn't love you for the things you regret. They love you for the person you became despite them. So let your regrets rest. Let your past stay where it belongs. And allow your family to love you. Not through the eyes of who you once were, but through the heart of who you are today. Every family has a history that never gets written down. A history that lives between the cracks of memories. In the quiet sacrifices. In the moments no one else ever saw. Especially the financial chapters. There were times, maybe in your 30s or 40s or 50s, when money felt like sand slipping through your fingers. Times when you lay awake long after everyone had fallen asleep. Staring at the ceiling. Wondering how you'd pay the next bill. How you'd keep the lights on. How you'd protect the people who depended on you. But you never said a word. You woke up the next morning. Made breakfast. Went to work. And kept going. Because that's what your generation did. Quiet strength. Quiet pain. Quiet endurance. And now, decades later, as you sit with your memories at 70, 80, or beyond, you may feel tempted to share those struggles. As if revealing the truth might bring relief or closeness. But here's the truth most seniors learn too late. Backhand index pointing right. Sharing old financial failures rarely brings healing. More often, it brings unnecessary worry, guilt, or confusion. Your children, no matter how grown they are, cannot go back in time and fix those struggles. They can't erase the debt you silently overcame. They can't repair the business that failed. They can't undo the near loss of the family home that you courageously protected without ever asking for help. And when you tell them these stories now, they don't hear strength. They hear pain. Pain they can't change. Pain they feel responsible for, even though they shouldn't. There's a quiet truth among elders that younger generations rarely understand. We struggled so our children wouldn't have to. Your sacrifices were never meant to be passed down like inheritance. They were meant to stop with you. Let the struggle stay with you, not with them. Let your children remember you as the steady hand, the one who kept the family safe, not the one who silently suffered in ways they can't comprehend. Let me tell you the story of Elena, an 83-year-old widow who carried a heavy financial secret for over 30 years. After her husband passed away, she made one risky investment. A decision driven by fear, grief, and the pressure to be strong for her children. Within months, she lost nearly everything. But she never told anyone. She went to work, sold old belongings, downsized silently, rebuilt slowly, and kept smiling through it all. When she became older, she felt guilty. She wanted her children to understand why she always seemed anxious about money, why she always saved too much, why she hesitated to spend even on herself. She sat with her friend one day and said, "I think I need to tell them everything. They deserve the truth." And her friend looked at her with the kind of wisdom that only comes from age and said, "Tell them the lesson, not the suffering." Those words changed everything. So Elena didn't tell her children about the nights she cried alone. She didn't describe the panic, the fear, the loss. She didn't burden them with a chapter they could never rewrite. Instead, she told them simply, "Being cautious is important. I learned it the hard way. And I'm grateful for the strength it gave me." And you know what happened? Her children felt admiration, respect, love, pride. They saw her resilience, not her wounds. Because your family doesn't need the full storm to appreciate your strength. They don't need to know how close you came to falling, to admire how powerfully you stood back up. And you don't need to hand your children burdens that belong to a version of you they never knew. Some financial struggles are not secrets. They are scars. And scars are personal. Let your family inherit your wisdom, not your worry. Every family, no matter how loving, stable, or united, has scars hidden beneath years of birthdays, holidays, and photo albums. Arguments that were never resolved. Misunderstandings that were swept under the rug. Moments of disappointment that quietly shaped relationships. Words spoken in anger that echoed much longer than they should have. Some wounds healed with time, and some simply grew silent. But here's something very few people talk about. Backhand index pointing right after 80, going back to those old wounds almost never brings healing. It brings disruption. There's a term psychologists use. Something becoming more and more common among older adults. Late life truth dumping. It happens when seniors feel an overwhelming need to get everything off their chest, as if clearing the air before leaving this world will make things better for everyone. But here's the gentle, honest truth. Not every truth needs to be dug up. Not every wound needs to be reopened. Not every betrayal needs to be revisited. Some things are better left where time placed them. In the attic of your memory. Folded, stored, and no longer handled. Because imagine this. You sit down with your adult children, now in their 40s, 50s, or even 60s. and you decide to reveal the full truth of a family conflict from decades ago. Maybe you tell them. Which sibling hurt you the most? Which child disappointed you? Which cousin betrayed your trust? Which in-law secretly caused tension? What someone said 20, 30, 40 years ago that you never forgot? Or a secret you learned about them long ago but never shared? What would that accomplish? Would it heal the past? Would it mend the relationships? Would it lighten your heart? Perhaps for a moment, but at a heavy cost. Because the truth is, backhand index pointing right, most truths revealed late in life don't heal the living. They divide the living. Your children may start questioning each other. Old sibling rivalries may flare up. Resentments may resurface. People may take sides. Relationships may strain. A family that has spent years learning to stay connected could suddenly find itself fractured. All because of a truth that belonged to a chapter already closed. And at 80, 85, or 90, what matters more? Perfect honesty? Or peace? Honesty is valuable. But peace, especially in your later years, is priceless. You've lived enough life to know that some things can be forgiven without being discussed. Some things can be understood without being spoken. Some things can be let go without being explained. Let me share a quiet but powerful example I once heard. A grandmother in her late 80s revealed to a friend that one of her children had deeply hurt her 40 years earlier. A betrayal she carried alone. Her friend asked, "Will telling them now change anything?" She paused, thought about it, and shook her head. "No. But it will change everything else. It would change the family dynamic. It would change the way siblings looked at each other. It would create tension that would outlive her." And so she chose silence. Not out of fear. Not out of weakness. But out of love. Because love sometimes means protecting the peace of others. Even when you carry a quiet truth inside your heart. Your later years are not meant for reopening old chapters. They are meant for comfort. For unity. For gentleness. For the simple beauty of being surrounded by the people you love. Not perfect people. Not perfectly honest conversations. But peaceful moments. So let the past stay in the past. Let old conflicts stay where they belong. Let the chapters that once hurt you remain closed. And let love, simple, quiet, unconditional love, be what remains. This one is the most delicate. And the most misunderstood. Because after 80, there are fears that arrive quietly. Fears you never knew existed in your 40s or 50s. Fears you can't explain unless you've lived long enough to meet them. The fear of falling, not because of the pain, but because you know one fall can change everything. The fear of losing your independence. The ability to cook, clean, move, decide. The small freedoms you never realized were freedoms at all. The fear of your memory slipping. Not forgetting facts, but forgetting moments. Names. Stories. Pieces of yourself. The fear of being a burden. Of becoming someone your children manage instead of cherish. And then there is the quiet fear. The one you rarely speak aloud. The fear of being left behind, emotionally, socially, spiritually. But here's the truth most seniors don't realize. Backhand index pointing right, sharing every fear doesn't bring comfort. It creates anxiety. Your children love you deeply. Sometimes so deeply that they panic at the idea of losing you. And when you share your fears without filter, something happens. Love becomes worry. Worry becomes stress. Stress becomes overprotection. Soon your adult children start calling more than you want, questioning every plan you make, hovering over decisions you're still capable of making, insisting on help that makes you feel smaller, weaker, older. Not because they doubt you, but because they're scared. And slowly, almost without noticing, you lose pieces of your dignity. You lose your privacy. You lose your sense of control. You lose the right to be seen as capable, even if you've lived longer and survived more than anyone will ever understand. But here's the wisdom that comes only with age. Backhand index pointing right, not every fear needs an audience. Backhand index pointing right, not every worry needs to be spoken. Backhand index pointing right, not every tremble inside your heart needs to become someone else's burden. This is not secrecy. This is not pretending. This is not hiding from your family. This is choosing peace over panic. This is choosing independence over unnecessary concern. This is choosing dignity over being managed. Of course, share what matters. Heavy check mark your medical needs. Heavy check mark your legal wishes. Heavy check mark your plans for the future. Heavy check mark your boundaries. Heavy check mark your preferences. Heavy check mark your truth when it protects your well-being. But the deepest fears? The softest whispers? The private thoughts that come to you at 2 a.m. when the house is silent and the world is far away. You are allowed to keep those close. Because some fears are not meant for fixing. They're meant for honoring. They're meant for holding quietly, with courage, the kind of courage only someone who has lived 8 or 9 decades can truly understand. And one more thing. You've already survived everything life has thrown at you. Every storm. Every heartbreak. Every loss. Every challenge. Every moment that once felt too heavy to carry. If you've made it to 80, 90, or beyond, you are not fragile. You are not weak. You are not a burden. You are strength in its purest form. And sometimes the strongest act is not speaking every fear, but choosing which ones deserve silence. Not for them. For you. For your peace. For your dignity. For your final years, lived with grace, steadiness, and the quiet confidence you've earned. Growing older isn't about confessing every chapter of your life. It isn't about emptying your heart like a box of old letters. And it certainly isn't about explaining every choice you ever made. Growing older is about protecting the peace you fought for. The peace you earned after a lifetime of loving, losing, rebuilding, and standing back up when you didn't think you could. You don't reach 70, 80, or 90 by accident. You reach it through storms other people never saw. Through sacrifices no one thanked you for. Through quiet nights of worry that no one remembers but you. And with age comes a rare kind of wisdom. The kind that understands that not every truth heals. Some truths are medicine. They restore. They clarify. They build connection. But some truths are poison. They reopen wounds. They plant new doubts. They weigh heavy on the hearts of those who never lived your story. Real wisdom is knowing the difference. So keep your regrets. They belong to your journey, not your children's shoulders. Keep those old financial battles. The lessons matter more than the suffering. Keep the conflicts that were buried decades ago. They don't deserve resurrection. And keep the fears you whisper to yourself in the quiet hours, the ones no one can fix but time. This isn't secrecy. This isn't avoidance. This is love in its most mature form. This is the kind of love that chooses to protect, not burden. To soften, not stir. To give peace, not questions. Because the truth is simple. You don't owe the world your past. You don't owe your family every memory. You don't owe anyone the pieces of your heart you worked so hard to mend. What you owe, what you truly deserve, is peace. Peace in your mind. Peace in your home. Peace in your relationships. Peace in the years you have left. Let the past stay where it belongs. Let the love stay where it matters. And let yourself live these years not as a storyteller of old wounds, but as a keeper of calm, grace, and dignity. You've earned that. You've earned all of it.